Good morning. Today we are looking at the concept of culture. What would you say? A person from Iceland is visiting your country. What are three things you will tell him or her about your culture? You can post your responses in the chat or unmute and speak. Adara, a sense of belonging. Kyle, identity. Luke, food. Yes, you're all correct. They all represent different aspects of your culture. So for this class, the objectives are an understanding of the concept of culture and being able to differentiate between material and immaterial culture. So how much do you know about culture? So I've broken you up into three groups: Adara, Johan, and Savitri in group 1, Kyle, Caleb, and Rain in group 2, and Kayla, Luke, and Samir in group 3. What I want you to do is discuss among yourselves three things that are part of your culture. And after about 3 minutes, I would welcome you back into the main group to share your ideas with the class. So group 1, Savitri, is saying respect and honesty, an important part of her culture. Group 2, Caleb, is saying religious buildings such as mosque, temple, and church represents his culture. And in group 3, Luke is saying that language is an important part of his culture. So you're all correct in terms of different aspects of one's culture. So let's connect what you have been saying so far with what the literature says about culture. So culture is a way of life that comprises of values, beliefs, and objects that provides a sense of meaning and identity. So it gives you a sense of belonging, a sense of meaning, and you really appreciate the culture when you are removed from your safe space and placed into another society, and you realize a lot of the things that you do or believe in or take for granted may not necessarily be the case. And there may be variations in what you eat, the music you listen to, the way you speak, the language, and you realize that how much you are culturally different when you are removed from your cultural safe space. And when we are discussing the concept of culture, there are two major categories. One is material culture, and the other is immaterial culture. When we speak of material culture, we are speaking about physical objects that provides a sense of identity, belonging, and meaning. So for instance, your national flags, your religious flags, your food, a lot of the food that we eat in the country and within the Caribbean may be unique to us and not necessarily universal. Clothing, architecture, musical instruments. So those of you who live in Trinidad and Tobago, when you drive around the Queen's Park Savannah, the Magnificent Seven represents architecture that we trace back to our colonial past. Whereas if you look at Napa and Sapa, they represent modern architecture, modern thinking about architecture. The musical instruments, such as the tabla or the tassa or the steel pan, are unique to us here in Trinidad and Tobago when compared to the wider Caribbean and other parts of the world. When we speak about immaterial culture, we are talking about the non-physical. It is beliefs, values, folklores, mores, superstitions that are unique to a people, that gives them that sense of belonging, that sense of meaning, and it gives them a sense of identity and may distinguish them from others within a society and among ourselves in the Caribbean. So let's play a game to be able to match the images that you are going to see in the next slide to either material or immaterial category. So you can type or unmute and say. So we're going to start with group 3 this time. Looking at image number 1, Kayla, what does that represent? Food, right? Food, and it seems to be fish and provision. And that is something that we can categorize as part of Caribbean culture, Caribbean food. Very good. When we look at image 2, we are seeing a woman with a headwear, but it's not just a headwear. What type of headwear is this? Kyle. Yes, it's called a gele, and it is part of our African heritage, and you would see it worn especially for African Emancipation Day, which is celebrated on August 1st in Trinidad and Tobago. And Savitri, the third image, the steel pan, yes, and steel pan is a musical instrument that was produced and created in Trinidad and Tobago in the 20th century, and it is considered as the only musical instrument created in the 20th century. And so we identify with the steel pan. Whenever you hear the steel pan, whether it's in Trinidad and Tobago or any other part of the world, your paws, your hair on your hands raised, and you feel that sense of joy and happiness because you identify with it. Let's look at the heading of this slide. Do not sweep over someone's feet. They will never marry. Anyone? Rain. Yes, this is part of our superstition, and it is something that comes out of our history and would have been passed on through oral tradition. It may not necessarily be true, but it's something that some people believe in, and they would tell you about it. And if something does go wrong, they would say it's because of the fact that someone would have swept a broom over your feet, and that's why you're having problems with marriage, etc. Again, it may not be scientific, but it is something that people may be believing and they pass on from generation to generation. The other two objects you see on the slides are what we will call symbols. On the left-hand side, you would see a skull and a bone, and that is a universal symbol for poison. So you know when you see the symbol, it is something that you stay away from. And the other symbol on the right-hand side, bottom right-hand side, you would see a swastika with a symbol that was associated with Nazism. So once you see the symbol, it is something that you will want to be cognizant of, and a symbol that the group of persons who may be bearing this, you may want to stay away from them, especially if you come from the Caribbean or parts of the world that do not subscribe to neo-Nazism. So these are ways in which symbols can also be part of your culture and understanding your culture, either for or against. So now that we have done a review of what is culture and what are some of its components, let us take a few minutes to look at this question. How does material and immaterial culture influence each other? Caleb. So Caleb is going back to his earlier comment about religious buildings, and he's saying that religious buildings are a part of our material culture, but the religious buildings also inspire a sense of belief and values such as honesty, cleanliness, respect. So that's the connection between material and immaterial. So if you are looking at these buildings, these religious buildings, they imply a certain kind of beliefs and values and practices and behaviors that you will associate with them. So they reinforce each other. And what I want you to do further is a reflective activity where you would write down one reflection of each material and immaterial culture as relates to your personal life. And you can post this in the discussion forum on my e-learning. As we wrap up today's class, we want to summarize what we would have learned. Culture is a way of life that includes values, norms, beliefs, and objects. And we practice culture daily. For additional reading, you can look at the Mustafa 2018 Sociology for Caribbean Students. The link for today's lecture will be posted on my learning, and you can go back and visit the lecture. And if you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to me via email, or you can post on my learning. Thank you very much, and do enjoy the rest of your day.